له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. We have been witnessing the demonstrations in this country for the last 10 days because of racism and injustice that has been going on here for almost 400 years. As Muslims, what does our religion teach us? We need to read the Quran and read the Hadith and learn from the Quran and the Hadith. So today, inshallah, I would like to discuss the verses in the Quran and the Hadith briefly that deal with justice. And then later on, we'll talk about what we can do individually as community. But when we're looking at the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us, command justice. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in chapter 16, verse 90, God commands justice and fair dealing. Inna Allah ya'muru bil adli wal ihsan. To the end of the verse. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala command justice and fair dealing. Then another verse, verse 8 in chapter 5, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, O you believe, be upright for God and be bearers of witness with justice. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين لله شهداء بالقسط ولا يجرمنكم شنآن قوم على ألا تعدلوا اعدلوا هو أقرب للتقوى واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون. Then there is another verse. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us لقد أرسلنا رسلنا بالبينات وأنزلنا معهم الكتاب والميزان ليقوم الناس بالقسط وأنزلنا الحديد فيه بأس شديد ومنافع للناس وليعلم الله من ينصره ورسله بالغيب إن الله قوي عزيز. We sent our messengers with clear signs and sent down with them the book and the measures in order to establish justice among the people. Again, this is chapter 57, verse 25. Here it is clear that the message is global message. It's not just for one particular group, because here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that we send our messengers, all of them, with clear signs and send with them the book and measures. Why? In order to establish justice. For all the prophets came with this message to establish the prophets. And then another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين بالقسط شهداء لله ولو على أنفسكم أو الوالدين والأقربين إن يكن غنيا أو فقيرا. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us here, oh you believe, stand out firmly for justice as witnesses to Allah, even if it is against yourself, your parents, and your relatives, or whether it's against the rich or the poor. So this is again in chapter 4, verse 135. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in another verse, God doesn't forbid you from doing good and being just to those who have neither fought you over your faith nor evicted you from your home. لا ينهاكم الله عن الذين لم يقاتلوكم في الدين ولم يخرجوكم من دياركم. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again tells us about being just. And the verse ends, وَتُقْسِطُ إِلَيْهِمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْمُقْسِطِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves those who are muqsitin. And then another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, if you judge between them with justice. This is verse 42, chapter 5. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَإِنْ حَكَمْتَ فَحْكُمْ بَيْنَهُمْ بِالْقِسْطِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْمُقْسِطِينَ. And Allah loves those who are muqsitin. And then another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, إِنَّا أَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكَ الْكِتَابَ بِالْحَقِّ لِتَحْكُمَ بَيْنَ النَّاسِ بِمَا أَرَاكَ اللَّهُ وَلَا تَكُنْ لِلْخَائِنِينَ خَصِيمًا. We have revealed to you the scriptures with the truth, that you may judge between people by what God has taught you. And then another verse, chapter 42, verse 15, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, say, I believe in the scripture which God has sent down, and I am commanded to judge just between you. وَقُلْ آمَنْتُ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ مِنْ كِتَابٍ وَأُمِرْتُ لِأَعْدِلَ بَيْنَكُمْ. So again, another order from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be just, telling the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Another verse 58, 58, chapter 4. God command you to render trust to whom they are due, and when you judge between people, judge with justice. إن الله يأمر أن تؤدوا الأمانات إلى أهلها وإذا حكمتم بين الناس أن تحكموا بالعدل إن الله نعم يعظكم به إن الله كان سميعا بصيرا. Another verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, when you speak with just, even if it is against someone close to you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us here, وَإِذَا قُلْتُمْ فَاعْدِلُوا وَلَوْ كَانَ ذَا قُرْبَى وَبِعَهْدِ اللَّهِ أَوْفُوا ذَلِكُمْ وَصَّاكُمْ بِهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَذَكَّرُونَ. Another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُونُوا قَوَّامِينَ لِلَّهِ شُهَدَاءَ بِالْقِسْطِ وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآنُ قَوْمٍ عَلَىٰ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا اعْدِلُوا هُوَ أَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَى وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ خَبِيرٌ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ. O you believe, stand up for good as witness to justice. Let not the hatred of others towards you make you unjust. Be just. This is closer to piety. And be mindful of God, for God is well aware of all that you do. Again, this is chapter 5, verse 7. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, do not discriminate regarding skin, color, or ethnic background or faith. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير. O mankind, we created you from a pair of male and female and made you into nations and tribes in order that you may know one another. Indeed, the most honored among you in the sight of Allah is the person who is most righteous of service to others. Again, this is verse 13, chapter 49. But it is clear from these 12 verses I mentioned from the Quran that justice is an order from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if we say we believe, then we need to follow the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we must follow what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala demands us to do. Then, now let us look at what our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us to do. So if we look at few hadith, first one, what we learn is where it's reported in Sahih Muslim, there are 7 categories of people whom God will shelter under his shade on the day when there will be no shade except his. One is the just leader. This is one hadith. And another hadith, it's reported in Sahih Muslim, O my slaves, I have forbidden injustice for myself and forbid it also for you. So avoid being unjust to one another. Another hadith, there are 7 categories of people whom God will shelter. Again, that we already said that a person, a leader who just, a leader who is just. Another hadith, O my slave, be just. So avoid being unjust to one another. So when we read the last sermon of our beloved Prophet ﷺ, one of the paragraphs it was mentioned, the Prophet said ﷺ, all mankind is from Adam and Eve. An Arab has no superiority over a non-Arab, nor a non-Arab has any superiority over an Arab. Also, a white has no superiority over a black, nor a black has superiority over a white, except by piety and good actions. So, our beloved Prophet ﷺ taught us to recognize, to expose, and reject racism. So, what do we learn from the Quran and the Sunnah of our beloved Prophet ﷺ? First, we are ordered by Allah to be just, even if it's against ourselves or those who we love. Second, we are warned not to follow our likes and dislikes or our vain desires, because if we do, we will wrong others and will not be just. Third, even if we decline to perform justice, we are wrongdoers. Fourth, Allah knows all what we do, so we cannot hide things from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And another thing we learn is justice is close to piety. Another thing we learn, according to the Quran, justice is an obligation. It's not a choice. It's not whether I want to do it or not. Another thing we learn, no discrimination between men and women regarding a human dignity and accountability. Another thing we learn from our beloved Prophet ﷺ and the Quran, the rulings apply to all nations. There is no discrimination, whether we're in the United States or we're in Palestine or Egypt. The rules are the same. Followers of all faith, it doesn't matter whether you're Muslim, Christian, Jew. This is why we mentioned that verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent all messengers with the same message, to be just. So as a matter of fact, the message is clear to all humanity. It's not just one particular. And also we learn that the Quran shows us that justice has been the goal of all the revelations and scriptures sent to humanity. Also, we learn that justice denotes placing things in their rightful place. Also, we learn giving others equal treatment. It means we don't discriminate. And we need to keep in mind that justice is also a moral virtue. And also we need to understand that justice creates a state of equilibrium in the distribution of rights and duties. Look at what's happening in the United States. We really don't have equilibrium. We have this unbalanced situation. And when you have unbalanced situation, then we have disasters. We have all these, what's happening right now, because the fact is we don't have an equilibrium system. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala orders us to be just and to do good and forbid evil and transgression. We should learn from our diversity and work together. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us that way, created us white, black, all colors for a reason, so that we get to know each other, not to hate each other and not to kill each other. And also, we were created from this diversity so that we can get to know each other, not to isolate each other, not to be the blacks with the blacks, the Arabs with the Arabs, even with the Arabs, among the Arabs, the Palestinians alone, the Egyptians are alone, even, for we cannot have these groups together. We're supposed to love each other, to care for each other, and to protect each other, and to be just. We need to understand, to keep in mind that it is the will of Allah that He created us different languages, different background. Why? In order that we learn from one another and work together, appreciate each other. And also we learn that what distinguishes one person from another is not his or her skin color or ethnic background or lineage, but her character, her behavior, and how he or she applies her faith and helps those who need help. And also we learn that we should not be afraid of those who are not like us, or isolate ourselves, or listen to bigotry, or become prejudiced. So, on the other hand, we learn that injustice, this is the opposite of justice. So, injustice, what that means, oppression, corruption. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke to His messenger, "O my slaves, I have forbidden injustice for myself and forbid it also for you. So avoid being unjust to one another." This is reported in Sahih Muslim. For we are ordered to avoid, and avoid in Arabic, it doesn't mean that just stay away. Stay away as far as you can. Don't even come near it. So someone said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So if you have injustice in the United States, this is a threat to justice everywhere around the world. Today in the world, there is a lot of injustice going on. This injustice, whether social, economic, educational, healthcare, or political injustice. Here in the United States, where we claim this is the greatest country in the world, we have injustice. When we look at the educational system between white and black, we have injustice. When we look at the economic situation, we have injustice. When we look at the social aspect, the healthcare, even the political situation, we have a system that is not balanced. We don't have equilibrium. We don't have equal rights in this country. So there are a lot of problems in the world caused by denial of human rights, basic freedom, occupation of land, individuals, and state-sponsored terrorism, wars. So what's happening now in the United States is a great example of injustice. It's been going on for 401 years. It's not just because of George Floyd who was killed last week, but because of what's happening the last 401 years. So we learn from history that injustice will not last. We need to keep that in mind. If we read the history, we can see that injustice will not last forever. But in order to have safe world, justice must be established. But we must start with ourselves, with our families, with our community, and the world. We, the Muslims, bear this responsibility, and we must be a good example for others to follow. We learn from the Quran that peace cannot be achieved without justice, and we cannot have justice without changing our thinking and our behaviors. Brothers and sisters, the questions we have, where do we start? What is the first step? We have to start with ourselves and ask ourselves these questions. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. But we have to start with ourselves. We have to change our behavior individually. Each one of us should ask these questions. Am I following the Quran and the Sunnah? How do I treat my family members, my children, my spouse, my brothers? Do I discriminate against them? Do I have a just system in my house? Am I just with myself and my family members? Am I just with community members? When I go to the mosque, how do I treat my other brothers and sisters who are different, who are from another country, who are different skins or background? How about my employee, whether they are Muslims or non-Muslims? How do I treat them? How about my customers? Do I treat them all the same? Or do I have different treatment based on their ethnic background or the color of their skin? What should I do when I see injustice? Do I keep my mouth shut because I am afraid to lose my job, or it's not a good idea for me, for my interest? How about what's happening around the world? How about what's happening in the United States? What am I doing to help so that we can establish justice wherever I can? We live in Cincinnati area. What are we doing as Muslims, as individuals, as a community to help to establish justice in the society we are in? Am I doing the best I can to prevent injustice in my family, in my community, and anywhere I can have influence? Are we ready to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and answer the question? Because in the day of judgment, each one of us will be asked, you witnessed injustice. What did you do about it? I cannot say, well, I didn't have time. I was busy in my office. I was busy making money. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala demands us to establish justice wherever we are. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. If I said anything good, it's from the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If I said anything to offend anybody, I'm sorry. And if I said anything that is not right, it's my lack of knowledge. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive me. So if there are any questions, I would love to answer any questions or any comments. Any questions, any comments? If not, then let us make dua, inshallah. Let us ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive all of us. Let us ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us so that we can be united. Let us ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect all of us. Let us ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us that we can apply the Quran and the Sunnah. Let us ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us so that we can speak the truth all the time. Let us ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the strength so that we can fight injustice. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وقنا شر ما قضيت. اللهم لا تدع في مقامنا هذا ذنبا إلا غفرته ولا هما إلا فرجته ولا مريضا إلا شفيته. ربنا إننا آمنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا. اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم انصر المسلمين في كل مكان. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. جزاكم الله خير. May Allah help us all, and may Allah help us so that we can pass this coronavirus and pass the situation we're in. Inshallah, one day we wake up and we see justice all over the world, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair.